Good morning. Welcome to today's webinar. We have here Planning Teaching Strategies by Professor Kimbe Alpire, okay, from Bolivian English Teachers Association. Um, so on behalf of Venezuela TESOL and Central American and Caribbean Basin TESOL affiliates, really invite you to the Planning Teaching Strategy YouTube live session, right? There are some countries here. So can I see the next slide, please? That are part of these affiliates, right? And right. So we have here Belize, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Venezuela, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, Puerto Rico, and Dominican Republic. That are part of the Central America and the Caribbean basin. There are some um, upcoming events. All right. So we have here TESOL Colombia 2019, going beyond theory, rejuvenating literacies. We have the date from May 16th to May 18th this year. The venue, Universidad de la Sabana Chia, close to Bogota. There are here some topics: assessment, innovation, methodology, and material design, teacher development, digital learning experiences, teaching and learning communities, language learning and literacies. There are other events. Here we have in Honduras, right? TESOL 5th Annual Convention. So you have here the date from June 28th to June 29th this year. The venue, Instituto Bautista El Buen Samaritano, San Marcos de Colón, eh, Choluteca. Okay, so you have more info, you have here the link. Then we have here at TESOL Costa Rica Convention 2019, Competence in Teaching Practices for Effective Performance. So we have the date from July 3rd to July 5th this year. The venue in San Jose. You have here the contact information, the email address. And then TESOL 37th National Convention. This will be from it will be in June or July this year because of some problems in Venezuela. So we're just still looking for the date in order to have this event. Right. All right, that's it. So, well, let's have here, we have here the extract of, of this webinar. Lesson planning can be stressful and difficult. Make a plan for teaching involves a lot of issues to take into account, from cultural, technical resources, pedagogical approaches, and some other aspects. But remember this, the harder you work in your plan, the less you will work in the classroom. Planning is a key factor on any field of production. Today's teachers prepare a lesson plan only to hand in a document to the school or institution's principals because this is a mandatory task in most academic institutions because this is a mandatory task in most academic institutions. Sorry. The time of planning, many teachers copy and paste standard format and make only a few changes just to deliver this important instrument to the authorities. But what exactly is a lesson plan? What things require the analysis and design of the strategies in classroom activities? What are the guidance or approaching idea that guide the teaching learning process? What is the role of teachers and the students? And how should these procedures be carried out? The design of teaching strategies through a lesson plan is a unique and creative work. Teachers are called on to do these activities for they are the ones who know the context, the syllabus, the objective, and the most important, the students. No one else can do this task. Therefore, it is really important to learn how to design strategies for teaching at any level, any purpose, or any institution. We have here Kimby Alpide was born in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. He has been an English teacher for almost 20 years. He holds a diploma in computer science and master's degree in higher education from the local state university. Currently, he's a school teacher at Cristo Rey Secondary School. Also, he is a professor at Universidad Evangélica Boliviana, where he teaches the subjects of research methodology and TOEFL preparation. He has a lot of experience teaching teenagers and college students. He can speak Portuguese fluency as well. He loves talking about education, politics, and professional development. So, welcome, Professor.
Okay, hello. Hello, can you copy?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Uh, okay, let's get started here. Okay, good morning, everybody. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Greetings from Santa Cruz, Bolivia. My name is Kimby Alpire, and I'll be presenting today's webinar. The topic is about planning teaching strategies. I like to say that today's topic is not only for teaching languages, but also for any other subject at school or college. Okay, let's get started. Okay, here we go. Okay, let's start with the definition of planning. Planning is the process of thinking about and organizing the activities required to achieve a desired goal. Planning is deciding in advance what is to be done. When a teacher plans, she or he projects a course of action and bases it on decisions on purpose, knowledge, and time estimates.
Professor Kimby,
Yes.
hello. Could you please activate your camera, please?
Okay, let me see.
Okay, we can see your presentation.
Okay. Give me a second.
Okay, don't worry.
Now, can you see the presentation?
Not yet.
Not yet. One more time.
Okay. Uh-huh.
Okay. Can you see it?
Yes. Good.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay.
Like I said before, I was given the definition of planning, and you can see that on your screen right now. Planning is a very important activity in any area of work or production. Even in our daily life, we make plans all the time. Even if we do not write it down or make a formal plan, we make a plan in our mind. For example, when we go out in the street, we have a plan in our mind. We have a purpose or an objective in advance. So we make plans because it is a way to support our actions. In the same way, in education, we make a plan to reach learning objectives. So if we take it seriously, a plan should be designed consciously, intentionally, and scientifically. Some people make plans just because this is a mandatory requirement at the school or college, but that's another story, okay? Uh, Before getting deeper into our topic, let me show you this image. Are these all familiar to you? What comes to your mind when you see this image? How much do you know about all these topics? Let's see, here we have strategies, learning theories, approaches, methodologies, techniques, taxonomies, competences. And we as teachers, we have read, studied, and analyzed all these topics in the past. Some of us know a lot of them. Some of us know a little bit about them. But the question is, what are they for? Or I should say, how do all this fit in a classroom? How do we bring into practice all these issues? This is a really big and serious challenge we had to face in our job every day. Well, this is a personal opinion, but I think it is to me, this is a big and serious challenge. Like I said before, the challenge is how to bring all these theories into the class. We know something about psychology, philosophy, education, history, politics, etc. But the point here is we have to learn how to select a theory or an approach or a strategy and make it match with our students' needs and interests. I hope you agree with me because this is a very interesting issue, in my opinion. Don't worry, we will talk about this later on. So what is a lesson plan? A lesson plan is a teacher's plan for teaching a lesson. A lesson plan is the teacher's guide for running a particular lesson. And it includes the objective, and that is what the students are supposed to learn, how the objective will be reached, that is the strategy, the methods, activities, class organization, and a way of measuring how well the objective was reached. That is a test, a worksheet, homework, etc. Here you have an image of what a lesson plan is. Uh, it says, what do I want to learn? What do I want my student to learn? What teaching strategy will I use? And how will I check for understanding? Okay, let's go on with the components of a lesson plan. I guess you all are familiar with this because you do this every day or every week. But I have a few questions for you. How serious are you at the moment of making your lesson plan? How do you manage this? Do you follow a standard format? Do you make a plan for every single day? What aspects do you take into account at the moment of selecting a teaching strategy? Before going on, let me show you this image. I didn't make these matches. I took this from the internet, and you can read here the meaning or the definition of teaching strategy. Includes all aspects as context, task analysis, teaching objectives, changes in the behavior, attitude of student, etc., etc. So a strategy is a big picture approach. It is the overall idea or plan. A strategy comprises of methods, teaching materials, interests, abilities, class organization, and assessments. As for example, maybe your strategy is problem-based learning. You can accomplish this via a series of individual methods. So the methods are part of a strategy. On the other hand, methods are the more specific categories of learning activities that will allow students to achieve outcome objectives of the class. So methods come under strategies. A method becomes visible and tangible through the tasks, activities, and techniques. So a method is a logical and rational thought. You can use it or put it in practice through tasks, activities, and techniques. So today here we will focus on how to design the strategies, the teaching strategies. Okay, let's check this out. This is a diagram of the teacher learning process. So you see here the first category is the objective. Then comes the content. And then here you have the teaching strategy. So the teaching strategy comprises of methods, teaching material, and class organization. Over the first two categories, that is objective and content, you have no control because usually they are provided by the school principal or the authorities. That is, they come in the syllabus curriculum, so you don't have to prepare or elaborate the objectives or the content. Now then, it is the strategy that you can design or elaborate. You design and create a strategy based upon the information you get from the learning objective and the content. Okay, from now on, we will focus on this only, the strategy. Okay. Also, can you see where the methods fit? Here on the diagram, the methods are part of the strategy, as well as the teaching material and the class organization. So these three categories, they interact with the teaching strategy. That means that you can change or adapt or modify the teaching material, the class organization, and the methods at any time or at any moment. On the contrary, the objectives and the content, you cannot change them because they come in the syllabus. Okay, so what is a teaching strategy? Teaching strategies refer to procedures and methods that are delivered by a teacher in order to help a student learn the desired course content. These procedures are structured and delivered in a reflexive and flexible way in order to achieve a meaningful learning in the students. So I would like you to pay attention to these two words, reflexive and flexible. So what does that mean? Reflexible and flexible way. Reflexible means that you have to give a lot of thought before starting to write a strategy. And flexible means that you can make changes or modify or adapt something in the procedures. This can happen during the preparation of the plan or when running your class. Okay. Okay, now let's check some examples of strategies. Here you have some examples, okay? You can check them out on the internet for all these strategies. And they are divided according to the moment of the class. So, for example, you have strategies for the opening, for the development, or for the closing. Some people here call this the beginning, the middle, and the end. Okay, but it's the same. Uh, so let's read a few ones. For example, for openings, you have here graphical organizer, learning goals, visualization, trigger questions, Socratic methods. And for the development, you have concept maps, research method, PBL, learning with information communication technology, simulation, role play, project method, etc., etc. So you may wonder, why do we have to design a strategy if we already have plenty of them? Or you may say, my textbook comes with the strategies and I can use them. The answer relies on the meaning of a teaching strategy. Remember the two words, flexible and reflexible and reflexive? This means that you can pick up some strategy from the previous list or from your textbooks. But the question is, will they fit properly into your student needs? What about the materials, the teaching materials? Do you have the materials mentioned in your textbooks? So all these are problems. Also, when writing or making your lesson plan or copying the strategy from your textbook, you have to figure out what might work or what might go wrong when applying this into your class. So if you just copy and paste the strategy from the textbooks, you have to make yourself these kind of questions. So of course you can use these strategies, but the point is that you will have to make changes or adaptations according to your students' needs and interests. You can add or eliminate some activities or methods. You can try it, but later on you will have to get some feedback and analyze what worked well and what went wrong in order to make some more changes for the better. In some cases, you will make so many changes that your strategy will turn into another strategy. Okay, let me show you this. This is a didactic sequence. A didactic sequence is a group of learning activities arranged in a specific order, which takes into account the student's progress. The didactic sequence starts with an initial production. It is followed by a series of tasks and ends up with a final production. So like I said before, you may design different teaching strategies based upon the moment of the class. The moments of the stages of the class are the opening, the developing, and the closing. So you have to run your class by dividing in three different stages. That is what we call didactic sequence. Let me show you this. Let's take a look at this image. Like I said before, I mentioned that there are many different strategies. The classroom is a dynamic environment bringing together students from different backgrounds with various abilities and personalities. So being an effective teacher, therefore, requires the implementation of creating an innovative teaching strategies in order to meet students' needs. The design of teaching strategies through a lesson plan is a unique and creative work. We teachers are requested to do these activities, for they are the ones who know the context, the syllabus, the objectives, and the most important, the students. For this reason, you are the one to elaborate your own strategy. On the image, can you see the yellow light bulb on the right side? Okay, yes, that is your strategy. That is the one you have to create. Okay, let's get started with the design. Here you have an outline of a strategy. The basic outline has to do with the learning objective. That is what I want my student to learn. Then you have to select the content to work on based on the syllabus. Then you have to select the resources you have available for your class. Once you get complete information about these elements, you can start designing your strategy. Okay, so here we go. Designing has to do with designing different strategies for the 3 moments or the 3 stages of a class. The opening stage, here you have to decide a strategy to introduce the topic. The next stage is the development stage. Here you have to design a strategy. In order to do so, you have to select what tasks, what methods, what activities, and what techniques the students will use to develop their competences. And the last one, the third stage, is the closing. Here you have to design a strategy for the student elaborate a final product. Okay, so remember, each strategy may have tasks, methods, activities, and techniques. It is a good idea to write the purpose of each task or activity. Set the criterion of requirements of each activity. Set the strategy in terms of opening, development, and closing. Collect performance evidence for assessment. And finally, set a name for the strategy. Okay, let me show you an example of this. This is my strategy for the opening stage. And the time is for 15 minutes. And the objective is a student will be able to use personal experience and keepsakes vocabulary to talk about memories. And then here, the teacher shows a real photo of his parents. And then here you can get more details about the photos, like names, age, where they live, and etc. Then the teacher tells them that he visited his parent on last Christmas season. The teacher organized a family trip to Peru for 5 days. He took them to a nice hotel in the countryside. He shows 3 more pictures of the trip. He makes comments on what they needed for the trip. And then here you can start writing on the board. You make a list here like passports, suitcases, money, sunglasses, hotel reservation, plane tickets. Once you have introduced this, the teacher makes questions about the topic. So here the teachers interact with the students. Did you travel on Christmas seasons? Where? How was it? For how long? Then after that, the teachers elicit the student to tell him what else people may need to travel. In here, you can add the items on the list on the board. And here you have more examples, more items, like a vaccination card, visa, cell phones, etc. The second stage, which is the development stage. Here in this example, I am introducing the use of textbooks because I guess most of you use textbooks in your school or college. Okay, so let me read this plan. Using the textbooks, this is activity number 2. The student listen to the audio 2 times. They are to listen to the travel advice and number the activities in the order they are mentioned. So the activities are get a passport, book a flight, stay in a hotel, exchange money, visit a zoo park. Then check their work as a class. Make 1 or 2 questions about the listening activity to make sure they understood the activity. Explain the meaning of new or difficult vocabulary. For example, book a flight. So they don't know the meaning of book. They relate this the meaning of book to a textbook or a book. But they know this as a noun, not as a verb. So you have to give here some explanation. Ask a student to work in pairs. So they are to write sentences, 5 sentences in the past simple, using the activities mentioned before. Write 2 model sentences and then monitor their work. Invite some students to read their work aloud. Check for pronunciation and verb tense. And the final stage, that is the closing stage. Write on the board or use a projector if you have one. Display a model dialogue about the topic. This dialogue should have 5 or 6 or 7 lines. Then next they are to practice in pairs, model the dialogue with a good student, ask 2 pairs of students to read it for the class, check for pronunciation, and then ask the student to write a similar dialogue in pairs. Monitor and walk along the classroom. Then ask 2 pairs of students to read their work for the class. Encourage the student to tell their dialogues without reading their notebooks. So this is the planning of strategies. So you can see here there are many different strategies for each stage. Okay, now let's go over the plan one more time and make a closer analysis. So here on the opening stage, Here, the teacher shows a real photo of his parents. What is that? First, I use real photos, real events, a real event that happened in the past, or a story. That is a meaningful learning. When you present real photos or real events, that is a meaningful learning. Then, when I say teacher tells them that he visited his parents on last Christmas, he organized a trip, that is my introduction is visual, not verbal, because I am presenting the photos of my parents, and that is visualizations. Okay, then the next one. The teachers make question about the topic. Did you travel on Christmas season? That is that I make questions. Make questions mean that I trigger questions to interact with the class. So I can introduce the topic and more, little by little. Then on the last sentence says the teacher elicits the student to tell him what else people may need to travel. That is, I elicit the student to bring up more vocabulary for the topic. What does that mean? That is previous knowledge from the students. For the second stage, I practice the listening skill. When I say student listen to the audio, that is a practice the listening skill. And the second sentence, they are to listen to travel advice and check their work. That is, that I check their work and make questions. When I say to make sure they understood the activity, that is the ongoing assessment. Uh, when I say ask the student to work in pairs, that is collaboration and communication. When I say they are to write 5 sentences in the past simple, and I say here, write 2 model sentences, that is modeling. When you write a model sentence, that is modeling. When I say invite some student to read, that is active participation. And when I say check pronunciation and verb tense, that is ongoing assessment. Okay, on the next stage, the closing stage, when I say write on the board, display a model dialogue about, I am displaying a model dialogue using a projector or writing on the blackboard, that is modeling. So when I say they are to practice in pairs, there is collaboration, modeling, active participation, and assessment. Okay, because you said ask 2 pairs of students to read, that is active participation. And when I say check pronunciation, that is assessment. Okay, the next one says ask them to write a similar dialogue in pairs. That is writing activity. But in the writing activity means that they are producing, they are giving productivity, creativity, meaningful learning, and student-centered learning, because they are elaborating, they are creating on their own. Um, when I say encourage the student to tell their dialogues without reading, that is a multiple intelligence. Why is that? Because there are some students who are good at speaking, but they are not good at writing or listening. So the multiple intelligence means that you are promoting to your student to develop their abilities in the class. So in this case, for those students who are able to speak fluently, you can encourage them to say a dialogue without reading their notebooks. So this is a procedure that you can follow in order to design and elaborate your own strategy. So what is what you have to take into account when designing a teaching strategy? Remember the first picture or the first image that I showed you at the beginning of the lecture. There are many theories, there are many approaches and strategies, and there are many things to take into account when designing your lesson plan, and to be more specific, when designing your strategy. So here you have a list of the aspects or issues you had to take into account. And of course, there are many more, but in my opinion, these are the most important ones. For example, you had emotional intelligence. That is that you had to know something about motivation or body language or gestures. The learning theories, you had to know something about Piaget, Vygotsky, or Freire, or Brunner, etc., etc. Also, you had to take into account the competences like creativity, collaboration, critical thinking, communication, problem solving. Also, don't forget about modeling. This is a very, very important aspect to take into account. Repetition is a key factor when learning languages. The use of ICT technologies, also taking into account the curriculum, the syllabus, the facilities where you develop or run your classes, the competences, digital literacy, school policies, and you see there are many, many more. Uh, I would like to stop and mention here the two aspects that I consider very, very important. They are the context in negotiation. What is the context? Uh, for a particular teaching strategy to be appropriate and efficient, it has to be in relation with the characteristic of the learner and the type of learning it is supposed to bring about. Suggestions are there to design and selection of teaching strategy must take into account not only the nature of the subject matter, but also how students learn. The cultural aspects and the context are very important. That is the community, their beliefs, the lifestyles. All these are the context and the cultural aspects. Also, the teaching material available in the school. As for example, you cannot use the ICT tools, the information communication technologies, if there is not an internet service in your school. Or, for example, another example is when a student don't like to express about their personal feelings. These are cultural issues that you have to take into account when planning or designing your lesson plan. So you have to be aware of all of these issues at the moment of making your plan. Another aspect, very important, in my personal opinion, is negotiation. You can and you have to negotiate at all time. Remember the definition of teaching strategy? They are procedures and methods delivered by a teacher in order to help the student learn the desired course content. And also, these procedures are structured and delivered in a reflexive and flexible way. What does that mean? It means that whenever you apply a teaching strategy, at any moment, you can make changes or accept suggestions from your students. When you run a class, at some points, students will ask you to do things in different ways, and you will have to agree with them. Remember, teaching is an intentional process, but also it is a constant negotiation process. So, as long as they get stick to the learning objectives, you have to agree and say, okay, go ahead. So that is a negotiation. Okay, so that is the whole presentation for today's webinar. And I would like to share here my screen with you, and I would like to listen some comments or questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you, Professor Kimby. You're really Thank you so much, Professor, for sharing your work with us in this webinar. We really appreciate your time for being here and sharing your knowledge about this interesting topic, planning, teaching tragedies. It was a really a good, a very specific presentation about this interesting and so important topic. Um, I'd like to remember our participants how to obtain the webinar certificate. You will be emailed by Ben TESOL, and you have to reply the following questions about this webinar topic. And the questions are: question number one, what is the biggest challenge that teachers have to face today? Question number two, what is a teaching strategy? Question number three, a didactic sequence is divided in three stages. What are they? So there you are the questions. Please remember to answer the mail, answer those questions. Now, um, I would like to say thank you to Professor Kindi again. Professor, thank you so much for your presentation. Would you like to say some words to our participants in this moment, please?
Um, I guess this presentation will be recorded on YouTube. So I would like to
Yes, of course.
the people who are getting online right now, they can go over on the YouTube and check out this presentation one more time, and you can uh, take a closer look and study and analyze about my presentation. And if you have any questions, you can reach me. And I would like to send my right here. You can hear me. My email is mrkimby@gmail.com, or you can reach me also on Facebook. Are you getting the my screen here right now?
Yes, thank you, Professor. We have some comments here from the participants, and I'd like to read them. And here we have uh, a comment. Diplomado de Inglés Kurla says, lessons plans are our daily bread, unforgettable to skip it. We have another comment here. There always seems to be a confusion between method and strategy. Sometimes we tend to use strategy to name everything, and there are clear differences. So fruitful. So also we have a question. I'd like to inform our participants that you can uh, ask your questions about this topic. And here we have a question. What would you advise to teachers who don't lesson plan? Professor?
Okay. My advice, like I said at the beginning of the presentation, uh, to me, in my personal opinion, this is a very serious issue because there is no way it is unacceptable that you see a teacher with a lesson plan. It's like giving a class like with using the direct instructions and using most many teachers. Uh, I don't know in your countries, but in Bolivia, many teachers don't make a lesson plan, or they just copy and paste from their textbook, which is not correct. Like I said before, um, you have to you can use the strategies that you have in your textbook, but you have to adapt or make changes in order to meet your student needs, because you are the only one who know your students. So if you get a strategy from your textbook, this textbook was elaborated maybe in Mexico or in Singapore or Tokyo. And this is another reality. So the strategy might probably will not work in your country or in your student needs. So you have to make changes. The other question was about the difference between strategies and methods. This is a very confusing terms that some people use interchangeably because they are not the same. The methods are part of the strategy. The whole picture, the big picture approach is the strategy. In a strategy, the strategy comprises of methods, teaching material, and class organization. So the methods are not really visible because the methods are rational and logic thought that you have in your mind, but they become visible when you run or develop a technique or an activity. This is the only way you can see the methods, by using a technique or an activity. So, for example, when you run an activity or a technique, you tell the student how to do it. So you have to do it, for example, from the top to the bottom, from the right to the left, or you had to skip, or you had to underline, or you had to highlight. Those are techniques, but you are using a method because, like I said before, the methods are visible through the techniques and activities. Okay, so the
Okay,
methods are part of a strategy, and what you
good.
have to do when you make your plan is to elaborate the whole strategy. And the strategy has to be divided into the opening, the development, and the closing. And at
Okay,
any moment, for these three stages, you have to use different strategies. Okay,
Good.
that
Good.
is my
Yeah,
explanation.
thank you so much. That's really, really important to know that how to classify the this tragedy. Thank you so much, Professor. We have another question here. Is there any community of teachers who share the lesson plan with others?
Uh, I don't think that
Professor?
is a good idea for if you are if they are colleagues and work in the same school with the same students, the same level, it might work. But
Okay.
usually that's not going to happen because if you teach that you work in another school and you share your lesson plan with the other teacher, that's
Mm-hmm.
another context. They are other people, other students, other objectives, I can say. So you can use it, but you have to make some adaptations or changes in order to meet your student needs.
Okay. Good. Good. Thank you. Here we have another question. Julio Palma asks, do you use the same strategies for all levels of proficiency?
No, of course not. No, no, no.
Okay.
You can see in the presentation there are many, many different strategies. My suggestion is that you check them out on the internet. There are many methodologies and strategies, and you can pick up three or four strategies. And from then, once you get used to using them in your classroom, once you get familiar with these three or four strategies, you can use it um, for your classroom all the times. But remember, when you get a strategy from the internet, that means that you can use it, but you have to make the changes and adaptations according to your students' needs, according to the level, according to the classroom organization. For example, if the lesson plan says the students are going to use a cell phone in order to look up some information, but what about if your student don't have the cell phone or they don't have the Wi-Fi service in the classroom? So you cannot use that strategy. So you have to find another way to run this activity without using technology. So that is the reason why it is better if you can design and elaborate your own strategy because you know the reality of your classroom, you know the reality of your students, the context, the cultural aspects, and all these you have to take into account when planning or elaborating your strategy.
Okay. Good. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your questions. Here we have another one, Professor, from Carlos Mayorga. Is there a suggestion in the lesson planning structure when working with two linguistic skills instead of four as usual? I mean, an English for conversation class.
Uh, will you please repeat the question?
Okay, is there a suggestion in the lesson planning structure when working with two linguistic skills instead of four as usual? I mean, an English for conversation class.
Okay, this is a good question because that is the reason why you had to make your own plan because it is you the one who know your student. If you have students with different abilities or different skills, you have to take into account the multiple intelligence here. So you have to make different plans for a group of students and another strategy for another group. So This is a part of the strategy. When you comes into the class organizations, what does that mean? The class organization means that you had to organize the group, maybe by abilities, maybe by age, maybe you had to arrange the classroom or the chairs in a different way. So all this you have to take into account because it is you that you know the students. So this is a very important to that a good idea that you make your plan because you have to take into account all these aspects, the different ages, different levels, different abilities, and the facility, the classroom. Is it big? Is this a small class? How the chairs are arranged? All this you have to take into account and make your plan. You cannot use a specific plan for all your students. If you
Okay.
have different groups, you have to make a different strategy for each one.
Okay. Thank you. We have another. Vihayan asks, any adaptation of it required for ICT enabled strategy?
Any adaptation?
Yes.
Yes. Uh, yeah. Once again, if the when I say teaching materials, that means what kind of resources you had available in your school, right? Or if you had to prepare your own materials. So
Mhm.
according to this, the school materials or the teacher's materials, you had to prepare your plans accordingly, right? If for the
Mhm.
ICT, it's the same. If you want to use ICT tools, for example, when you
Okay.
make your plans, you have to make sure, for example, that all your students are able to use a specific tool. For example, if you are going to use a virtual platform or a Kahoot application, for example, in their cell phones, you have to make sure that all the students are able to use the application. You have to make sure that all the students have the cell phone. You have to make sure that the internet service at the school works properly. So all these issues you have to take into account when
Mhm.
preparing your lesson plan.
Okay.
Otherwise, your plan will not work because one of these aspects might not work properly. So that's why this is a thoughtful activity. You have to work hard when preparing your lesson plan. But like I said, the harder you work in your lesson plan, the less you will work in your class.
Okay. Good. We have to take into account a lot of aspects here, huh? Homerush Virtual Learning asks, is the strategy contextual?
It has to be.
Mhm.
It has to be because I said at the end of the presentation about the how important is the context
Yes.
and negotiation. The
Mhm.
context is really, really important because it is not the same lesson plan in Mexico like in Argentina or in China, for example. That is a context. And also, negotiation is very important. For example, when I say flexible, that means that when you run an activity and you see that something's doesn't work or something is not working well, so in that moment you can make changes. That is the meaning of flexible. For example, if you are running a class and you are using the ICT tools, and for some reason uh, the internet services goes off, right? So here you had a problem. So you had to do something else in order to fix the problem. So you had to come up with another activity. So that is the meaning of flexible, and
Okay.
it has to be contextual, and it has to be you have to negotiate.
Okay.
Something in your class is not working properly as you expect it to do, so you have to negotiate. The student may come up with another idea or some suggestion, and you have to agree. You have to say, yes, you're right. Okay, we have to do it. Okay, we go ahead. Let's do it in that way. So that is negotiation, and it's
Mhm.
fine. That is no problem. You
Okay.
are sticking in your lesson plan. You are doing well, but you have to be flexible as well.
Okay. Very important that, huh? Thank you so much for your questions, dear participants. We have another here, Professor, from Elena de Freitas. She asks, uh, what are the major aspects to be taken into account when planning a lesson to students with Asperger syndrome, dyslexia, or ADHD?
That is a
Really
that is a big
interesting.
question, but let me show you this here in my presentation here.
Okay.
Here, can you see the presentation right now?
Yes.
Okay, here it says here the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, the sixth, the item number six. It says differentiation. It means disabilities or learning problems. Uh, I really don't have an answer for that because I'm not a specialist with this kind of um, differentiations or disabilities. But like I said, you have to take into account this kind of issues when you run your class. But if you are a teacher, that means that you are a specialist on this kind of special special learnings or disabilities. But you have to take into account this. But I'm not able to answer this question because I don't know much about how to teach to those special people.
Okay. Thank you. It was a really interesting question. Interesting question. Sorry. Well, we can say that we have finished our question and answers section. So I really I really want to thank you, Professor, again for your presentation and for talk to us about this interesting topic, which I am pretty sure that all the participants have enjoyed and learned with you about this topic. Thank you, Professor. Would you like to say some goodbye words, please?
No, that's it. We are already on the time's up right now, and I would like to thank you for having me here in this presentation. And I hope to see you uh, virtually, I guess. I hope to see you on the next presentations. So if you have any question, uh, you can email me or text me on Facebook. Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, thank you, Professor. We hope to see you soon and thank you so much. Have a nice day, Professor.
Bye bye.
Now, now I'd like to share with you again our upcoming events. Mm, I remember you again, TESOL Colombia 2019. We have here the information, the day, the date, Universidad de la Sabana, Chia, close to Colombia. There you can see the trends. Also, we have ELTA Honduras TESOL 5th annual convention in June, the 28th and the 29th, Instituto Bautista El Seminario. There you have the contacts and Facebook page of El Honduras TESOL for more information. We have to ACPI TESOL Costa Rica Convention 2019, competences and teaching practices for effective performance on July. There you have an email contact. Also, our TESOL 2019 on May from the 10th to the 11th, Universidad Católica de las Misiones, Posadas, Misiones, Argentina. There you have a link for more information. And Venezuela TESOL 37th National Convention, June and July 2019. If you are a media user, there you can see our media contacts from Venezuela TESOL Community of Practice. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for being here today. We are really happy for you, all your questions and your participation here today. We hope that you learn new things with us, and we are really grateful for your participation. Please remember, answer the email, answering the questions to obtain the attendance certificate. On behalf of the Central American and the Caribbean Basin TESOL affiliates, Belize, Colombia, Costa Rica, Cuba, El Salvador, Guatemala, Haiti, Honduras, Mexico, Nicaragua, Panama, Peru, Puerto Rico, Dominican Republic, and Venezuela, thank you so much for joining us today. We are really happy for having you here today, and thank you. See you next time. Have a nice day. Bye, everyone. Thank you.